Ladies, have you ever noticed how people treat you differently, even when you're just being yourself? A man suddenly shifts his posture, his voice more careful, more deliberate. A woman watches you, not with hostility, but with quiet curiosity, like she's trying to figure something out. You don't chase validation. You don't ask for attention. Yet somehow, you always leave an impression. And it's not about wearing the trendiest outfit or following beauty standards. It's deeper than that. It's the way you carry yourself, the way you speak with quiet confidence, the way you exist without needing permission. Not every woman has this kind of presence. But if you've ever wondered why some men hesitate around you, why some women either admire or challenge you, why you never quite blend in like everyone else, chances are you have something rare. This isn't just about attractiveness in the conventional sense. It's about a presence that commands respect and energy that shifts the atmosphere without effort. And whether you realize it or not, the world reacts to you. But here's the key. Attraction without self-awareness is power left unused. If you truly understand what makes you stand out, you can learn how to own it, how to carry it with grace, and how to strengthen it through the wisdom of Stoic philosophy. So, let's talk about it. And if this resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear this too. Because every woman deserves to recognize her worth. When men and women treat you differently, you've felt it before, haven't you? That shift in energy when you walk into a room, it's not something you can see, but you can sense it, like a ripple in the air. People notice you, even when you're not trying to be noticed. Maybe it's a man adjusting his tie or fixing his posture the moment he sees you. Maybe it's another woman watching you, not with hostility but with curiosity, as if she's trying to decode something about you. It happens in ways you can't always explain. A stranger holds the door open for a second longer than necessary. A group of people naturally makes space for you when you walk by. Conversations subtly shift when you enter a room. Some men become more careful with their words, suddenly speaking in a way that feels more intentional. Others seem unsure of how to act around you. Some hesitate, others overcompensate. And then, there are the ones who act completely indifferent, pretending not to notice you at all. But their body language betrays them. Women react differently, but they notice too. Some warm up to you immediately, as if drawn to your presence. Others become more reserved, observing from a distance, trying to understand what makes you stand out. And a few? They might feel a quiet sense of comparison, measuring themselves against you even if they don't mean to. This isn't about beauty in the conventional sense. It's about energy, presence, the way you exist in your own space with quiet confidence. I have a friend like this. Let's call her Maya. She isn't loud. She doesn't wear anything particularly eye-catching, yet every time she enters a cafe, people notice. The barista straightens his back a little more when taking her order. The couple at the next table glance at her, then at each other, as if sharing an unspoken thought. A man sitting alone hesitates before looking back down at his book. She isn't doing anything deliberate. She just is. And that's the most powerful thing of all. Because true attraction isn't about demanding attention. It's about existing in a way that naturally commands it. It's the way you move. Not rushed, not hesitant, but with quiet certainty. It's the way you speak, with conviction, without seeking approval. It's the way you hold space as if you belong wherever you choose to be. Most people go through life without truly seeing others. We glance at faces without thinking. We pass by strangers without taking them in. But when someone carries themselves with deep self-assurance, something shifts. They don't just exist in a room, they shape the way the room feels. And that's why people react to you. For men, this can be unsettling. Some admire it, drawn to your quiet magnetism. Some hesitate, suddenly unsure of themselves. Others pretend not to notice, but their actions say otherwise. They shift in their seat. Their tone changes when they speak to you. Some try to impress you, others challenge you, just to see if you'll break character. For women, the response varies. Some feel an unspoken connection, as if recognizing something in you that resonates with them. Others may feel a quiet pull of comparison, even if they don't want to. And a few might mistake their curiosity for competition, watching, analyzing, trying to find cracks. The truth is, this has little to do with physical beauty. It's about how you carry yourself. Confidence is a presence. a rhythm, a way of being that cannot be faked. It's in the way you hold eye contact, not aggressively, but with the calm certainty of someone who knows her worth. It's in the way you listen, fully engaged, without checking your phone or glancing around the room. It's in the way you walk, not seeking attention but moving with quiet purpose. This is what lingers in people's minds. This is what makes a man pause before speaking, what makes a woman take a second glance, what makes some react with admiration and others with discomfort. So how do you cultivate this presence? How do you strengthen what's already within you? First, be deeply aware of your body language. Do you fidget when you're uncertain? Do you avoid eye contact when you feel uncomfortable? Confidence isn't just a feeling, it's an action. Straighten your posture. Move with intention. Own the space you take up. Second, speak less, but with more depth. The most captivating people aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who make every word count. When you speak, let your voice carry certainty. Let your words have weight. Third, get comfortable with silence. A truly magnetic woman doesn't need to fill every moment with words. She allows conversations to breathe. She lets moments settle. And that, in itself, is powerful. Fourth, carry an air of mystery, not secrecy. There's a difference between being distant and being intriguing. A woman who knows her worth doesn't feel the need to overshare. She speaks when she chooses to, revealing just enough to keep people wanting more. If people treat you differently, if men seem hesitant, if women seem intrigued, it's not random. It's a reflection of what you carry within you. Some will admire it, some will be drawn to it, and some may feel challenged by it, but one thing is certain, they will notice. Because a woman who truly understands her worth doesn't just blend in. She doesn't need validation. She doesn't need permission. She simply is. 2. You don't try to attract attention, but people notice you anyway. There's something fascinating about the way certain people carry themselves. They don't demand attention. They don't walk into a room expecting to be seen, and yet somehow, they always are. It's not about being the loudest voice or the flashiest presence. It's not about the latest trends or a perfectly curated look. It's about something deeper, a kind of quiet magnetism, a presence that lingers. Maybe you've noticed it in yourself. You're simply going about your day, lost in thought, at a bookstore, sipping your coffee at a cafe, or walking down the street. And yet, people glance at you. They notice. Some try to catch your eye. Others seem intrigued, watching you for just a moment longer than usual. You're not doing anything special. You're just being. And that's what makes you stand out. I used to question this in my own life. I was never the girl who intentionally dressed to impress. I never had the loudest laugh at the party. But time and time again, I found myself in conversations with strangers who told me, "I feel like I've met you before." Or, "You have this energy about you." At first, I thought it was random. But then I started noticing patterns. The way people unconsciously reacted. The way men would pause for a second before speaking. The way women would either warm up to me instantly or seem slightly guarded at first, as if assessing something invisible. That's when I realized, attention isn't something you chase, it's something you attract. And the most powerful kind of attraction? It comes when you're not trying at all. We live in a world where people are constantly performing, curating their social media feeds, overthinking their outfits, crafting their words to fit in. But the truth is, the people who stand out the most are the ones who don't try so hard. Because real presence isn't created, it's uncovered. Some of the most captivating women I know are the ones who aren't constantly seeking validation. They don't scan the room looking for approval. They don't adjust their personalities to fit the crowd. They are just fully themselves. And this confidence? It's magnetic. The psychology behind this is simple. When someone isn't trying to impress you, it makes you curious, it makes you wonder, what is it about them? Why do they seem so content, so self-assured, so completely at ease in their own world? Most people are accustomed to others seeking their approval in one way or another. So when someone doesn't, it creates a shift. It captures attention in a way that feels different. This is why you don't need extravagant outfits to turn heads. You don't need to wear heavy makeup to be seen. You don't need to change yourself to be noticed. Because the most striking thing about you isn't what you wear. It's the energy you carry. There's a phrase in Stoicism that I love. What stands in the way becomes the way. In other words, the more you chase something, the further it often drifts from you. This applies to attraction in the deepest sense. When you seek attention, you give off a certain energy, one that can feel forced, even desperate. But when you simply exist, completely at ease with yourself, attention finds you naturally. So how do you cultivate this? How do you refine this quiet power that's already within you? First, focus on your inner world, not your outer performance. Instead of asking, how can I make people notice me? Shift your mindset to, how can I be more fully present in my own life? When you are deeply engaged in your passions, your work, your conversations, people will sense it, and that in itself is attractive. Second, embrace stillness. We live in a world that rewards noise and busyness, but some of the most captivating people are the ones who know how to sit with themselves. The ability to be comfortable in silence, to not rush to fill every gap in conversation, is a rare kind of confidence. Third, let go of the need to prove anything. The moment you stop trying to be interesting, you become interesting. The moment you stop trying to be beautiful, you radiate beauty. The moment you stop trying to be noticed, people can't help but notice you. This shift is subtle, but powerful. It's the difference between a woman who is always trying to be admired and a woman who simply is. I remember a woman I once met at an event. She wasn't wearing the boldest dress, she wasn't the loudest in the room, but she had something. An ease, a depth, a presence that made people lean in when she spoke. And that was enough. The world is full of people who are performing, who are reaching, stretching, trying so hard to be seen. But the ones who leave a lasting impression, they are the ones who don't try at all. And that's you. If you've ever wondered why people notice you, why men pause before speaking to you, why women observe you in a way that feels almost unspoken, it's because you carry something rare. A kind of self-assurance that can't be faked. A quiet confidence that doesn't need to be announced. A presence that lingers long after you've left the room. And here's the truth. You don't need to change a single thing about yourself to amplify this. You just need to own it. Because at the end of the day, attraction isn't about effort. It's about essence. It's about knowing who you are and simply being. 3. You make men feel they have to earn you. A man once told me a story about the most unforgettable woman he had ever met. She wasn't the most beautiful woman in the room. She wasn't the loudest, the most charming, or the most flirtatious. But there was something about her, something that made him feel like he had to be at his absolute best just to stand a chance. She didn't play games. She wasn't rude or dismissive, but she had a presence that made him think, if I want her attention, I need to deserve it. She didn't give her time freely to just anyone. She wasn't the kind of woman who laughed at every joke or entertained conversations that didn't interest her. She had standards, clear, unapologetic, and firm. And because of that, every interaction with her felt like a privilege. The men who weren't ready for that, they hesitated. Some gave up before even trying, knowing instinctively that mediocrity wouldn't be enough. But the men who understood her worth, they rose to the challenge. They put in effort, showed consistency, and revealed their character, not because she asked them to, but because they knew they had to. This is the power of a woman who knows her value. She doesn't lower her standards to make others comfortable. She doesn't rush to be chosen. She understands that the right man, the kind of man worth her time, will always step up. Most women are taught, directly or indirectly, that they need to make things easy, that they should be agreeable, accommodating, and accessible. But think about this. Anything that is truly valuable is never easily obtained. A high-value woman doesn't need to chase. She doesn't need to convince. She doesn't need to hand over her attention just because someone asks for it. She allows herself to be pursued, not because she's playing hard to get, but because she is worth the effort. And this is what separates women who attract temporary interest from those who command long-term respect. You see, men are wired for challenge. They are naturally drawn to things that require effort, that test them, that push them to be better. And whether they realize it or not, they respect most what they have to earn. This is why the woman who sets a high standard is the woman who stays on his mind. Not because she's being difficult, not because she's making him chase for fun, but because she values herself enough to know that not every man deserves access to her world. It's the difference between a fleeting attraction and a lasting impression. A woman who makes men feel like they have to earn her isn't cold. She isn't closed off. She's simply selective. She doesn't entertain inconsistency. She doesn't entertain half efforts. She doesn't settle for less just to avoid being alone. And this shifts everything. Because a woman like this doesn't just date differently. She lives differently. She doesn't waste time explaining why she deserves respect. She embodies it. She doesn't beg for loyalty. She expects it. And men can feel this. When she speaks, her words carry weight because she knows she doesn't need to prove herself. When she walks away from something that doesn't serve her, she does so without looking back. When she loves, she does it fully, but only when she knows it's deserved. And men notice. Some will step up, some will fall away. And both outcomes are exactly as they should be. Because the truth is, not every man is meant to stand beside you. Some will admire you from a distance, too intimidated to approach. Some will try, but realize they don't have the strength to match your energy. And then there will be the ones who recognize exactly what you are and rise to meet you there. And isn't that what you truly want? A man who sees your worth, not because you convinced him, but because he recognized it on his own? A man who chooses to grow, to show up, to be better, not for you, but because being with a woman like you makes him want to be better for himself? Because here's the thing, a woman who knows her value isn't for the faint of heart. She challenges a man, not by demanding more, but by simply existing as she is. She makes him question whether he's strong enough, disciplined enough, worthy enough to stand next to her. She makes him earn it, and when a man earns something, he values it. This is the kind of woman who isn't forgotten. The one who lingers in a man's mind long after she's left. The one who, even if things don't work out, will always respect. Because she never gave herself away too easily. So the question isn't whether men find you attractive. The question is, are they willing to rise to the occasion? And if they're not, then they were never meant to stand beside you in the first place. 4. You are not an option, you are the standard. She walked into the restaurant, not in a rush, not looking around nervously, but with the kind of presence that made people take notice. She wasn't loud, she wasn't trying to stand out, and yet heads turned, not just because of how she looked, but because of how she carried herself. A man at the bar, sipping his drink, saw her and straightened up instinctively. The woman sitting near the entrance glanced at her, adjusting her own posture slightly. The waiter, who had just been lazily chatting with his coworker, suddenly became more attentive. She wasn't performing, she wasn't seeking attention. She was simply existing as herself. And that was enough. Because when a woman truly knows her worth, she doesn't try to fit into anyone's mold. She doesn't adjust herself to be more likable, more approachable, more acceptable. She doesn't ask for a place, she is the place. And the people around her, they can feel it. That's the difference between a woman who is the standard and a woman who allows herself to be an option. Most women are conditioned to believe that they need to be chosen, that they need to prove themselves, adjust, compromise, make themselves more appealing so that someone will see their value. But here's the truth, when you see your own value first, the world has no choice but to recognize it. A high-value woman never asks, "Am I enough?" She doesn't measure herself by someone else's standards. Instead, she sets her own. And this changes everything. Because people don't just look at her differently, they feel different around her. Men sense that if they want a chance with her, they need to step up. They don't assume access. They don't assume she'll be available just because they show interest. Instead, they recognize that her presence is a privilege, not a given. And the men who can't handle that, they either fade away or they try to test her boundaries. But she doesn't waver. She doesn't lower her standards for temporary attention. She doesn't entertain half-hearted efforts. She doesn't settle for good enough just because she doesn't want to be alone. She knows that being alone in her own power is better than being with someone who doesn't meet her where she is. And women? Some admire her. Some envy her. Some are inspired by her presence and want to understand how she moves through life with such certainty. But others? They might question her, challenge her, Ask why she's so picky, why she doesn't just settle down like everyone else. They might even accuse her of having too high of standards. But what they don't realize is, she's not being difficult. She's being deliberate. Because when you refuse to be an option, when you stand firm in your value, you force the world to rise to your level. And here's the truth. Not everyone will rise. Some people will try to convince you to shrink yourself, to be easier, more accommodating, more likable. But the right people, the ones who truly see you, they'll respect you more because of it. Because deep down, people value what they have to work for. Think about it. The things in life that are handed to us easily, that don't require effort or commitment, they're rarely appreciated in the long run. But the things we invest in, the things that demand something of us, those are the things we cherish. And it's the same with relationships, with friendships, with every aspect of your life. The moment you stop trying to be liked and start focusing on being respected, everything shifts. You don't attract people who are looking for something temporary. You attract people who recognize your worth from the start. Because here's something most women don't realize. You teach people how to treat you by what you accept. When you tolerate inconsistency, you teach people that they can be inconsistent with you. When you over-explain your worth, you teach people that your worth is something that needs justification. When you settle for less than what you deserve, you teach people that less is enough for you. But when you say no, when you walk away from what doesn't align with you, you send a message. A silent, powerful message. I know who I am. I know what I bring to the table. And I won't lower myself just to fit into someone else's expectations. This is the kind of woman that changes rooms without saying a word. The kind of woman that men don't forget. The kind of woman that doesn't need validation, because she validates herself. She's not waiting to be chosen. She chooses herself. So if you've ever felt like you needed to prove your worth, if you've ever caught yourself adjusting your personality to fit what someone else wants, stop. You don't have to chase anyone. You don't have to convince anyone. Be so undeniably yourself that the only people who come into your life are the ones who truly belong there. Because you are not an option. You are the standard. 5. You make men feel insecure if they're not good enough. There's a moment of silence when a man meets a woman who carries herself with certainty. It's almost imperceptible, but if you pay close attention, you'll see it. A slight hesitation before he speaks. A pause in his movements, a shift in his demeanor. He recognizes something in her, something that makes him instinctively aware of himself. Men have two reactions when faced with a woman like this. They either rise to meet her energy, or they retreat into themselves. Some will feel the need to step up, to become sharper, more deliberate, more intentional in their words and actions. They don't see her confidence as a threat, but as an invitation, an unspoken challenge to become the best version of themselves. Others, they shrink. They feel uneasy, intimidated, unsure of where they stand. Instead of rising, they withdraw. Or worse, they mask their insecurity with false indifference, pretending not to notice her, making passive-aggressive remarks, or downplaying her presence in a way that only reveals their discomfort. A woman who knows her worth doesn't go unnoticed. She moves through the world with a presence that demands respect, not because she asks for it, but because she embodies it. She doesn't chase approval, doesn't need validation, and doesn't adjust herself to be more palatable. And for some men, this is unsettling. Because most men are used to being admired easily. They don't often encounter a woman who isn't automatically impressed, who doesn't lean in just because they show interest. And when they do, it forces them to question themselves in ways they aren't always ready for. This is why some men will test you. They might tease you, challenge your opinions, or act like they aren't affected by your presence. But the truth? They are. A man who acts indifferent toward a high-value woman is often the one most affected by her. He doesn't ignore her because he truly doesn't care. He ignores her because acknowledging her would mean confronting his own self-doubt. You'll notice this in social settings. Some men will unconsciously straighten their posture when you walk by, adjust their shirt, or deepen their voice. Others will act unaffected, pretending they didn't see you, as if refusing to acknowledge you somehow gives them control. But silence, avoidance, and feigned indifference, They're all just different expressions of insecurity. A man who is truly confident in himself doesn't feel the need to downplay a woman's presence. He doesn't get defensive or attempt to humble her. He sees her strength and meets it with his own. This is how you separate those who are ready from those who are not. A high-value woman doesn't make men feel insecure. She reveals the insecurity that was already there. The right men, the ones worth your time, will never feel the need to minimize you to feel better about themselves. They won't make comments about how you're too much or try to test whether you'll lower yourself for them. Instead, they will step up. They will respect your energy, not fear it. They will recognize your presence, not try to diminish it. They will match your frequency, not expect you to lower yours. But the ones who aren't ready, they'll show you. They'll avoid you. They'll make dismissive remarks. They'll try to control the narrative by pretending you don't exist, because acknowledging you means acknowledging their own shortcomings. This is why you must never shrink yourself for a man's comfort. If he feels intimidated by your presence, that is his battle to fight, not yours. You were never meant to be less, so that someone else could feel like more. A woman who fully embraces her worth will always be a mirror. She will reflect a man's confidence back to him, or expose his insecurity. And here's the thing, a man who is meant for you will never feel threatened by you. He will not see your confidence as something to be tamed. He will not mistake your independence for arrogance. He will not try to make you smaller so that he can feel bigger. Instead, he will feel inspired. He will recognize that being with a woman like you means constantly evolving, constantly improving, constantly rising. Because strong men don't fear strong women. They don't run from challenge, they embrace it. And that's how you know who is worth your time. The ones who step up, they are the ones who can stand beside you, who understand that true partnership is about equality, not dominance. And the ones who shrink, they were never meant to walk this path with you anyway. So when a man reacts to you with hesitation, with avoidance, or with forced indifference, remember, his reaction is not a reflection of you, but of where he is on his own journey. Let those who are ready rise, and let those who are not remove themselves. Because you were never meant to make yourself smaller just to make someone else feel secure. You were meant to stand tall, exactly as you are. And the right man, he will not fear your strength. He will rise to meet it. 6. You receive special treatment without asking. There is a moment when you start to realize that the way people interact with you isn't quite the same as how they treat others. It's subtle at first. A door held open just a second longer, a lingering glance, an unexpected kindness from a stranger. Then, as time goes on, you begin to notice the pattern. People offer to help you before you even ask. You get seated at the best table without requesting it. The energy in a conversation shifts when you speak. It's not something you actively pursue. It just happens. And the reason? It's not about luck. It's not about external beauty alone. It's about presence. A woman who carries herself with quiet confidence, with an air of self-assurance and grace, naturally commands respect. She doesn't demand it, she doesn't beg for it. She simply moves through life with the kind of energy that makes people feel drawn to her. And this energy? It affects the way the world responds. You see, most people navigate life unconsciously. They're too caught up in their own thoughts, their own concerns, their own distractions, to truly see those around them. But when someone moves differently, when they carry themselves with poise, when they speak with intention, when they hold space without seeking validation, people notice. It's an instinctive response. Human beings are wired to recognize energy. We are drawn to those who appear self-possessed, just as we instinctively respect those who exude certainty. And this is where special treatment comes in. Because the truth is, we all project signals, whether we realize it or not. And the signals of a high-value woman? They are unmistakable. She doesn't ask for attention, yet people naturally include her. She doesn't demand priority, yet she often finds herself receiving it. She doesn't seek approval, yet she is given respect without question. This is not manipulation. This is not about playing a role or pretending to be something you're not. This is about being deeply, unapologetically yourself, and allowing that to be enough. And when you show up like that, the world responds. This is why the most magnetic women don't chase. They don't push. They don't force their way into spaces that don't align with them. Instead, they embody a presence that invites others to act differently around them. And this extends far beyond social interactions. It's in the way people take you seriously in professional settings, offering you opportunities that others have to fight for. It's in the way strangers go out of their way to assist you without you even asking. It's in the way men naturally want to impress you, not because you demand it, but because they sense they should. And the irony? The moment you stop chasing validation, the moment you stop trying to prove your worth, is the moment people start giving you exactly what you once sought. Because confidence isn't just something you feel, it's something you transmit. This is why two women can walk into the same room, wearing the same outfit, speaking the same words, and yet be received in entirely different ways. It's not just about what you wear. It's not just about what you say. It's about who you are when you say it. A woman who truly knows her value doesn't rush to explain herself. She doesn't shrink in the presence of others. She doesn't overcompensate with loudness or demand attention with empty gestures. She simply exists in a way that makes others take notice. And when you exist like this, the world responds. People go out of their way to accommodate you, not because they are obligated to, but because they want to. And this is important, because the kind of treatment you receive in life is often a direct reflection of what you accept. If you move through the world, doubting yourself, questioning whether you're worthy of good things, people feel that. If you operate from a place of insecurity, always second-guessing whether you're enough, people sense that. But when you step into your own power, when you recognize that you are enough, that you have always been enough, people can't help but respond accordingly. And this is where transformation happens. Because the moment you start carrying yourself with quiet certainty, with self-respect, with the energy of someone who knows exactly who she is, the world adjusts to accommodate you. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's alignment. And when you reach this place, when you fully embody this version of yourself, you'll notice something else too. The things you used to chase, the validation, the attention, the approval, they will start chasing you. Because a woman who knows her worth never has to ask for it. She receives it. And that, more than anything, is what makes her unforgettable. 7. You don't seek validation. And that's the most attractive thing. There's something magnetic about a woman who doesn't need to be told who she is. She doesn't seek approval. She doesn't wait for permission. She moves through life with a quiet certainty, unconcerned with whether others agree, unimpressed by shallow praise, unaffected by unnecessary criticism. And people feel it. Most women are taught, in subtle and not so subtle ways, that they need to be liked to be valuable. From a young age, they learn that their worth is measured by how well they fit in, how agreeable they are, how easily they adapt to what others want. But the moment a woman stops seeking validation, the moment she decides that she alone defines her value, everything shifts. Because the truth is, nothing is more attractive than a woman who stands firmly in who she is. Think about it. When someone desperately needs approval, when they seek constant reassurance, when they mold themselves to fit the expectations of others, they unknowingly send a message: I am not enough on my own. And people respond to that energy. They treat you the way you treat yourself. If you carry doubt, if you hesitate, if you seek validation from the outside, people will sense that uncertainty, even if you try to hide it. But when you move through the world with the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need validation, that's when people take notice. Because true confidence doesn't ask, am I enough? It declares, I am. This is why women who don't seek approval attract people effortlessly. They don't need to chase relationships or attention. They don't need to over-explain themselves. They don't need to prove anything to anyone. And ironically, that is exactly why they draw people in. A woman who knows her worth doesn't need to post for validation. She doesn't need likes or comments to confirm her beauty. She doesn't need constant reassurance that she is interesting, desirable, or worthy of attention. She simply is. And this certainty, this refusal to seek approval, creates a presence that lingers. People want to be around her, not because she asks them to, but because they are drawn to her energy. Men especially feel this difference. A woman who doesn't seek validation forces a man to show up differently. He realizes that she is not waiting for his approval, not adjusting herself to fit his preferences, not trying to impress him. And this does two things. One, it weeds out the men who aren't ready. The ones who need a woman to boost their ego, who expect easy admiration, who feel unsettled by a woman who doesn't need them. Two, it challenges the right kind of man to step up. Because a truly confident man doesn't need a woman to idolize him, he needs a woman who stands beside him as his equal. A high-value woman never lowers her standards just to make someone else comfortable. She doesn't overcompensate. She doesn't tolerate inconsistency. She doesn't fear losing people who can't meet her where she is. Instead, she trusts that what is meant for her will never require her to shrink. And this trust, this unshakable belief in her own worth, makes her unforgettable. Because the reality is, people are drawn to certainty. Think about the moments in your own life when you've met someone who is completely at ease with themselves. You might not have been able to explain why, but something about them made you feel different. Like they had nothing to prove, nothing to defend, nothing to convince you of. Now imagine being that person. Imagine walking into every situation, every relationship, every conversation, knowing that you don't need anyone to validate you. Imagine how powerful that would be. This is what happens when you stop looking outward for approval and start looking inward for certainty. You stop worrying about whether people like you, and you start focusing on whether you like yourself. You stop chasing people who don't see your worth, and you start attracting those who recognize it instantly. You stop being afraid of rejection, and you start realizing that what isn't for you will naturally fall away. And this changes everything, because once you stop seeking validation, you become the kind of woman who doesn't just attract attention, you command respect. Not because you ask for it, not because you try to manufacture it, but because you are rooted in yourself. And that, more than anything, is what makes you truly magnetic. So the next time you catch yourself wondering if you're enough for someone, pause. Ask yourself, am I seeking approval or am I standing in my truth? Because the most powerful thing you can do is stop needing validation. And when you do, the world will start validating you anyway. The way you carry yourself, the way you see your own worth, it shapes everything. It determines how people treat you, how they react to you, and most importantly, how you experience yourself. A truly attractive woman is not the one who chases validation, who molds herself to fit expectations, or who fears being alone. She is the one who stands firmly in who she is. She doesn't seek approval. She commands respect. She doesn't wait to be chosen. She chooses herself first. And when she does this, the world responds. People recognize her energy before she speaks. Men either rise to meet her or quietly remove themselves, knowing she will not lower herself to accommodate their insecurities. She does not settle. She does not bend to be more likable. And because of this, she stands out, not by force, but by presence. This is not about playing a role. This is about stepping fully into your own power. So ask yourself, are you living as the standard, or are you making yourself an option? Are you shaping your world? Or are you waiting for others to shape it for you? If you've ever felt the weight of doubt, let today be the moment you release it. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever noticed these signs in yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story may inspire someone else.